My name's Chris. I am the lay Catholic chaplain at HMP Leeds. Obviously, during Covid-19, it's been a bit of a weird one. I used to introduce myself as the lay Catholic chaplain because evidently I'm not a deacon or a priest or anything else. And we would have priests come in to celebrate Holy Mass on a Sunday, which we're very lucky to do for a jail. But with COVID, there's been no congregational worship allowed. I know that we all had that outside as well, but that has been the case for more than a calendar year inside HMP Leeds now. So I've had the strange experience of being, in a sense, the only Catholic provision, although I'm under no delusions. I'm far from total. I still have to get poor Father Paul in if we need confession or we need to top up the Blessed Sacrament reserve in the tabernacle. Just to start with, image of wonderful HMP Leeds on the screen for those of you that may or may not have seen this building driving past. England has some prisons that look quite modern and look less intimidating like a prison. HMP Leeds, or Armley Prison, if you are, a Leeds local, obviously still has a bit of both. Built in the 1840s, still has a rather intimidating castle-like look. Inside, it's a little less like a castle. That's what everyone who works there sees, and everyone who comes in, and people who visit, volunteer, all that. Outside of COVID times, this is the view they get when they're driving or walking up to the prison. So yes, just a little bit about prison chaplaincy. Not just me. We are a multi-faith team inside HMP Leeds. We're all employed in the same capacity as prison chaplains. I am the Roman Catholic chaplain full-time during the week. I have a Church of England counterpart, at least one full-time imam, the Muslim faith, and then we have what are called sessionals. So Hindus, Sikhs, etc. We have a rabbi, people who come in as and when needed or do a couple of hours here or there. The personal ethos versus institutional is just a little bit of what I've touched already. That idea that actually as my ethos, what I, as a Catholic man, how I lead myself in the building and so on, and that obviously comes into play quite seriously into my view of things. And then there's an institutional ethos. Perhaps, for example, I might be thinking in my role and in my person more compassionately, whereas obviously the institution's ethos, its first mission is to keep people safe and alive, but behind bars, which is instantly already less of a compassionate headline. On there, you've got two words I'd like to think about perhaps over this evening: punitive or rehabilitation. So is prison, in your mind, there's no right or wrong to this, is the culture of prison, should it be punitive? Should it be rehabilitation? Everyone I ever meet, not just working in HMP, has different opinions, and there's a spectrum of answers to this. Some people say it should be more punitive the worse the crime. So in their own mindset, certain offences are more disgusting, more punishable, more kind of, gross and disgust people than other crimes. Those are more deserving of punishment, whereas others are more, oh, well, if you're a drug addict, you need help, so you instantly are recognised as needing rehabilitation. If said drug addict then robs someone or robs someone's house, I think most people would lean, especially if you're the victim, towards punitive measures. And lastly, on that slide, so you've got a key question: what is the point of prison? Is it to segregate? Is it to punish, to educate, or to rehabilitate? So prison in England, Wales, UK, or across the globe indeed, what to you, in your idea, what verb would go with prison? What is the best point of it? On this one, the key question to start with is, what are your preconceptions of prison? So do you believe, again, no right or wrong, do you humanise or dehumanize the people behind bars? If someone mentioned to you in the street, oh yeah, sorry, I'm an ex-con, I've been inside, whether HMP Leeds or anywhere else, for a year, for 10 years, for 20 years. If you've been an employer or you've run a business in your life and someone came to you with a CV, with a job application, and they announced quite truthfully to you, as they have to by law, that they'd been an offender without you knowing the offence, what's your instant reaction? Do you go, wow, well done, you've been in and now you're out again, so you've clearly served your time? Or do you instantly think, well, I'm a bit suspicious? So a little bit about the basics, if you have no idea about custody and how these things work. The three numbers you have on the screen in front of you now are the three categories, if you will, for why someone ends up in jail. So they're either remanded, committal to custody, innocent until proven guilty. So moving on to number two, sentenced is the opposite of remand. So that is when you've gone to court, you plead guilty to whatever it is you've been charged with. That's it. There's no trial. It's right, okay, we're going to sentence you then. You're going to have a sentencing hearing and we'll decide how much time you want to spend there. If you go not guilty, that's where the trial obviously happens. So that's what sentencing is about, declaring the punishment decided for an offender. And lastly, you've got recall. Recall is repeat offenders. They do things in desperation. They do little things that they're not doing on a criminal impulse. They're doing it more of a desperation impulse. So just a question on the end there to think of. What emotions would you think link to each different category? So just something again, if you're completely new to prisons, there is a categorization system across the country. HMP Leeds falls into Cat B. We're a local jail. We're a local remand jail, which is why we take everyone from all the courts in West Yorkshire. Category A is for your highest, so that's basically people who are deemed the worst threat to outside public. So in a Cat B, we can have murderers who have been a one-off, they lost their mind, their sense, whatever, and they've taken the life of someone. They regret it every day of their life. That is someone whose risk is assessed as not being very high to the rest of the public. Likewise, if someone murdered someone for no reason at all, they would instantly go into Category A. Category D, that is all about open prisons. In a Category D prison, every single inmate, in most of them anyway, is given their own cell keys, which like we all have house keys, and they are responsible for locking themselves up at night. So again, a bit of a difference to prison population in England. The figures on the screen in front of you are taken from the Ministry of Justice, which total them up each week, I think it is. So I've just taken one of the recent ones. You can see in those numbers there, something that might strike you is the disparity between male population and female population in England. There are some prompts on your screen at the moment. So I've just got there. Are there patterns in society or even gender in our, stereotypes and nature that could cause that difference? I'm not wanting to try and stereotype, but obviously there are stereotypes about, do men have more anger issues? Are we more likely to be aggressive? Can't speak for female prisons and populations. I'm sure in time we'll all speak to maybe one of the Catholic chaplains or someone else at HMP Newhall or one there to get a bit more on that. But it is something maybe worth thinking about. So you've got an aerial view on there in the bottom right corner. That's HMP Leeds seen by drone from above. At the top there in bold, you just have what the Ministry of Justice have on their website about our prison. Something to point out there is that ISFL wing, that's our drug-free wing. So we have one wing in the prison that is designed to encourage you, to try and incentivize you to keep off the substances and make your best shot at clean living when you come out the other side of your sentence. Just got a question down here at the bottom that maybe you haven't really thought of when it comes to prison. What are your personal reactions to the thought of sharing that tiny bit of space, a cell, with a total stranger? What kind of issues do you think? Is there anything that scares you about that? So a little bit more, like I was saying, about short-term versus long-term. So HMP Leeds being quite, in and out facility, as opposed to other jails. What's the difference between the two? So how does it differ for a prisoner? Some obvious bullet points there. Cell sharing. In our jail, you come back to your cell on a normal non-COVID day, you have your padmate, as they call them, your cellmate, to, if they're great, if you get on with them, happy days, you can speak to them. But I'm sure we all know what it feels like to have had too much of someone. That applies to husbands and wives, siblings, everyone. So they have that to contend with mentally as well. Cooking facilities. In a long-term jail, you get a shared kitchen and you have cooker, oven, fridge, etc., all to share. That's what a long-term jail is like. Not so in my jail. In this one, because it's short-term, there is a kettle that you get in your room, and that's pretty much the run of it. You get hot meals from the servery. So the meals are made in the kitchens, the big prison kitchens, brought up, think more like school dinners. They get brought up to the servery where everyone has to come down at lunchtime, at breakfast and so on, and collect their meal from the servery. Workshop and education opportunities then. During COVID, it's been a bit different, but normally in HMP Leeds, you have the ability to get some work done, so you can make yourself useful, or you can go and study if you need your English, your maths, and various subjects up to scratch. You can do that with your time instead. You go to a longer term jail, that's going to have proper, engineering courses, build the railway track courses and stuff like that, where hopefully once you get out after 5 years, oh, look, you've got qualified as a railway technician, set you up with a job. That's the idea. And last one, something you may not think about, clothing allowances. So a calendar year, you can order in 2 twice a year, different clothing from your loved ones, basically. And even then, you don't just add to it like an ongoing wardrobe, you have to trade. The thought on this slide then, which I'm sure you've seen as I've talked a little bit, thinking about yourself, those particular restrictions on your life, never mind other jails, which are different, HMP Leeds, all those are issues and could present as issues to your mental health. So would that take a toll on you? So again, just a little bit about what you faced with inside the jail. So you've got those 5 residential wings. That's where our 1,100 men reside. The wings are slightly different, so they're not equally proportioned. We have one wing that's drug-free and one wing which is VP, stands for Vulnerable Prisoners. And just on there, I mentioned the segregation unit and the hospital wing. That's just the idea of you've got a segregation unit for the badly behaved prisoners in the jail. One point I'd point out is at the bottom on the left, segregation. So what makes segregation different to A to F wings, so like normal wings? The removal of incentives. That is the official word for those of you that used to movies or anything else. Solitary confinement. It's not called that in jail parlance. It's called segregation. It's not, as you might see in the movies, it's not some horrible, leave them in a hole, don't talk to them for 6 months. This one shouldn't take too long, but it's just about the various agencies, the various bodies we have working within HMP Leeds. Some are fairly obvious, healthcare, pharmacy, doctor and dentist, and so on. A couple of other things on there you may not know. Storybook Dads, for example, is an initiative started in other prisons. I believe we run it as well, all about men who want to read books for their children, and then it gets recorded and sent to them. It's a lovely initiative. But that's an example of an agency that works in HMP Leeds. So something some of you may be thinking about. First day in jail. What happens when you get to the first day in jail? So you arrive. One of the first things that happens, you get put on the body scanner. Now, how many of you have gone on holiday and gone to the airport and hated that moment where it's going ding, 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 and you have to take your shoes off and your belt off, etc. That's the one. It's a bit more fancy than that. I think we made the local news for being one of the first jails to have one. It's a proper X-ray machine. So when you're a new chap who comes off the prison bus or straight from the courts or whatever, and you come into jail, straight on that body scanner, it scans you, see if you've got anything you shouldn't have. At the risk of sounding indelicate, obviously by then you've turfed out your pockets anyway. So yes, we are talking about something in you rather than on your person. If the thing goes bing, bing, bing and alerts the staff to you having something, whether that be, believe it or not, this does happen, concealed mobile phones and drugs are the other one. If the scanner indicates anything, basically, you are straight to the segregation unit. So after, assuming you were fine on the body scanner and you went straight through, you get interviewed by healthcare, by chaplaincy, by officers. So quite a few people you see. It's probably a bit of a whirlwind, especially the first time in custody. And you get an induction. That induction includes first phone call to loved ones. Key question on this one, a bit different. We always talk about prisoners and the men, women, people in jail languishing away. What emotions do you think family members suffer during this transition, this first day in jail moment? So people that you can see for support whilst in jail, I've got their landing officers and wing CMs. CMs stands for custodial managers. So a number of stripes. It works a bit like the military. People wear epaulets on their shoulders and the number of stripes to know how, what a better word, important you are. A little mention about IMB on there. It says the third bullet point down. So that's the Independent Monitoring Board. So we have it's not the ombudsman, but if you like an ombudsman, we have an impartial body whose job is to field complaints and issues and see what they can do in there. Question I've got on there, I'm sure we can think of a few. Can you think of any times in your life when red tape or that kind of poor admin seemed to be that really, aggravating experience? Do you, personally from your experience, do you have any ways of persevering through that? So nearing the end, Covid-19 changes. I'm sure some of you may have thought about this over the last year, whilst our own lives have been made a bit turbulent and, I dare say, a bit similar to prison and prisoners. Jail life, much like outside, was largely held in stasis, so things were frozen. No congregational worship for anyone. You were allowed to bring one single man to the chapel. So if someone was bereaved, and we want to light a candle to mark the passing of a loved one, say a few prayers. That was allowed, but again, socially distanced and wearing face masks. No gym, which was a huge one in jail. Gym was one of the few things, you'd probably be surprised at how many men in a walk around Armley jail, how many men are looking quite buff and trim and so on, because that was an outlet, whether they're doing exercises in their cell or whether they're using the gym equipment. But obviously they prefer the gym. No regular association, so socializing out the window. 23-hour bang up. Now that's one that's always struck me. I mean, imagine that, 23-hour bang up. So you're allowed out for half an hour to have a shower and fill any bits of paperwork and apps in that you need to, and you're allowed out for half an hour for association in theory, for socializing. But it's not the same as it used to be. It was just small groups on landings and so on. So no workshops, no education. Social and legal visits became like this: screens rather than people. Attending funerals, before you'd get considered for attending funerals of loved ones in person, you'd be cuffed to 2 officers. During COVID, it was a no. One that's interesting: face masks in prison. That took months and months and months. It was only in October maybe that we started having to wear face masks in prison, and it was as late as December that prisoners were told they had to wear face masks. And just at the end there, I've got remand times in custody elongated due to backlog. So spare a second to think about what that means. Remand time, remember, is innocent until proven guilty. So something a bit more proactive then. I get regularly asked by the SVP, by individuals, by some people who have my email address, which is wonderful, what I need, or what we need, what things can people do to help the chaplaincy in general, and more particularly the Catholic chaplaincy. On the screen right now, you have everything that, the sort of thing we're always looking for. Thanks to the SVP and the Catenians, who already help us out with rosary beads and donations for Christmas and Easter, but we are literally always in need. Reading material is a big one. We are running very low on that at the moment. Religious artifacts I have on there, all very useful. If you're not sure about something, let's say you had a bunch of 10 statues of the Virgin Mary made out of bronze, and you think, oh, I don't know if metal's allowed. It wouldn't be. But if you're ever unsure, get in touch with us. Email me, or ring HMP Leeds, ask for the chaplaincy. We'll let you know very easily in that terms of that. If you know anyone who's into the international sides of the Catholic Circle, I have on there that we do receive regular requests for Polish Catholic Bibles, and even the odd Albanian one and so on, which is true. I've had given out Spanish ones before and so on. So things that you might not think of, we do need as well. And obviously I've just got a key question on there to try and get you to think, what would you think would help your spiritual, being, that aspect of you in such an environment, you think? If you're besieged by nerves, by missing loved ones, loneliness, depression, longing, all those sort of things, what things do you think would help you the most?